Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Monday morning to you all. I hope you guys are waking up and feeling awesome out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day. And I do hope everyone's having a great beginning to your new week out there so far. There is a lot to talk about regarding the weather, and the first thing we'll speak on is the tropics. This will be a heavy weather topic between now and really the next several days, as we have an area of interest we are watching that I think has a shot to develop into our next named storm once it crosses Florida and gets into the Gulf. So we're going to speak on everything we know about this. We'll go over current conditions, even take a look at the radar, go over the latest information as far as the percent chances of this developing per the National Hurricane Center. It has went up a little bit since, say, last night's video, so we'll speak on that. We'll go over all model guides. We'll compare it. We'll show you the conservative model guides. We'll show you the aggressive model guides regarding this. And then we'll geek out with you guys a little bit. Speak on steering currents. Why is it going the way it's going? We'll speak on just the environment that does favor this to potentially develop once it gets into the Gulf. So after we get done doing all that, and we will speak a little bit about impacts, what we know about impacts. But after we get done discussing the tropics, we'll do what we normally do every morning video and go over today's weather and get detailed on that. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below. And then, stay tuned for the end of the video if you're interested for a Bible devotion, and we'll get in scripture and just talk on it and read on it and stuff like that. So let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So this is current satellite. As you can tell, most of your action right now is off the east coast of Florida, and you see the colors on your screen, the yellows, the greens, and especially those reds, dark reds, even some blacks. This indicates colder cloud tops, which means we have more intense convection. Shower and storm activity leads to stronger updrafts or taller updrafts, and the taller the tops of these storms get, the colder it is, the higher up you get. So this is indicated by these colder cloud tops here, and if you look at the key kind of right here, it shows once you get into those dark reds, that's pretty cold. So we know that we have some convection, some energy off the coast of Florida, and what we will watch for over the next 48 hours is for this energy to get on the west coast, on the western side of Florida, on the Gulf side, and have a shot to develop maybe somewhere, let's see, make sure we get this right, somewhere into this area over the next several days. So this is the actual, the core of the energy right now, and this will swing into this area more than likely, like I said, over the next couple days. And this is the area that the National Hurricane Center has kind of dubbed as the area of interest to watch for tropical development. So this is our energy right now. Now, let's continue to move forward here, and let's take a look at the actual radar. Now, it doesn't show a whole lot, but it kind of shows the flow around the western edge of what could be a little mid-level spin out there, but you don't really see much of a spin here on radar right now. Just waking up to some showers, some downpours across the peninsula of Florida. But this is a little bit out of the radar view here, but there is a lot of shower and storm activity well off the coast, the east coast of Florida, north of the Bahamas out here. You just can't see it, like I said, just because we don't have visibility regarding radar out in this area. But you can actually see a little pull down from the north to the south here. And what would we could assume that we're probably getting a pull up from the south to the north on this side. So there's probably a little bit of a cyclonic spin out there, but probably not a whole lot, probably not much of it, if you will. So this is what the actual radar looks like. I'll be interested to see as we get into the next 24 hours, as just this blob of convection gets a little bit closer to the state of Florida, if we can see a more visible spin on radar. Now, the latest from the National Hurricane Center, and I always reiterate this, probably a little bit too much, there will be another update in about an hour, maybe even less, 45 minutes. By the time I get to the end of the video, maybe we have another update. But as of now, you see where they have the yellow X. This is exactly what we just showed you on satellite. This is where kind of the heart of this area that we are watching is currently off the coast of the southeast. And you see the yellow area, it's saying it's going to swing over Florida and get into this yellow area where it has a 30% chance, and this is a bump up from a 20 to a 30% chance of tropical development between now and the next 7 days. So what does that mean, tropical development, you might ask? That means into a system that has a defined low-level circulation, a tropical depression or heck, even a tropical storm. The next name is Dexter. And by the way, I do think this has a shot to become Dexter, our next tropical named storm. But 30% chance to develop into that in the Gulf sometime between now and the next several days. So I want to watch to see if at 8 a.m. they bump this to a 40% chance. If they do that, it would show up in the orange here, which would mean it would be classified as a medium chance of developing, and that goes from 40 to 60% chance. So we got to watch that, but right now 30, and I think they'll keep it at that for a while. We'll see what will happen here. Now, let's go over model guides. Now, we're going to kind of cruise through some of this at a pretty steady pace. Because with some of these, there's not a whole lot to show you. So, for example, we'll start off by speaking on the Euro. The Euro doesn't show a whole lot of anything. We're going to start off by 12Z Tuesday, which is tomorrow morning Zulu time. Still has the actual L over here. Not sure if that's where it's going to be. But just in general, what you're going to see is splashes of green, splotches of yellow, orange, and red on your screen. Just think of all that down here as tropical moisture. And as we start to move this into, say, Wednesday morning, you can see the main concentrated area of energy now is over the eastern Gulf. You just see splashes of different colors, which just think of all this stuff down here is tropical activity, shower and storm and downpour activity over the Gulf. Now, is this going to try to consolidate into something? On this run of the Euro, it absolutely does not. In fact, we get into Wednesday evening, you can barely see anything out there. Now, this is just a global model. It's not like a short range HER model or just mesoscale model. It's not going to show those details we like to see as far as showing individual storms and stuff like that. But it does the best it can. Now we get into Thursday morning. You see how a lot of this moisture is more centered over the northern central Gulf at this point. So starting to get a lot of activity into Louisiana. But most of this is hanging off the coastline. But we start to get into, say, Thursday afternoon. And heck, just a normal run-of-the-mill thunderstorm activity sort of returns for Florida. But this is kind of what's left over of the energy here. I mean, it's hard to even separate this from that or this up here. But this is our energy. And then we pull into our Friday morning, and there's not really a whole lot to show you here. There's not really a whole lot to show you with this at all. But if you do kind of dive down into kind of the nerding out portion of this, if you will, and look at the low-level energy in the atmosphere, the vortice, you can see a little bit of a spin. And as we take this into, say, Wednesday, this is where our energy is, right here. If I put this in kind of into a continuous motion, you can see a little bit of a spin here, not much. You can barely pick it out. But this is where our energy sort of cruises in this region right here. And eventually, that low-level energy or low-level spin, if you want to call it that, does make it all the way into Louisiana, about Friday morning or so. So we'll be watching this all work week as it slowly cruises across the northern Gulf. Now, we take a look at, say, the GFS, and this is the same thing as we just showed you with the Euro. Can we pinpoint where this is? And I would say not really. It's the latest GFS. We start to get into, say, Wednesday morning, and I mean, all you see is just blobs of green down here. It's hard to pinpoint anything. And then we get into our Thursday. It's even a weaker signal if you compare it to some of the runs yesterday. And then you get into our Friday. I mean, you really cannot see any difference here. It's like it's Thursday, Friday. I mean, you really can't see anything. And even if you dive into, once again, that low-level spin, can we see it anywhere? You can see the energy a little bit more in this area. And if I put this in motion, you can see a little bit of a broad spin. But there ain't a whole lot to show you guys there. Now, that's the conservative model guides. What about some of the more aggressive model guides, which is the icon? It's been like this for the last about 24 hours. We'll start off Tuesday morning. Already has what looks like just a better area of energy kicking this off. And then we start to get into Wednesday. I mean, already Wednesday morning has 1,007 millibar low. Remember, we'll talk a lot about this all hurricane season. The deeper you see this number go, the stronger the low pressure, the stronger the storm system. And we keep this in motion. We get into Thursday morning. All of a sudden, we have Tropical Storm Dexter chilling here in the northern Gulf here. So we have a tropical storm heading right towards southeast Louisiana at this point Thursday morning. Now we get into Thursday night. We have a landfalling, strong tropical storm, maybe even low-end hurricane, Category 1 hurricane, moving in somewhere along the Gulf coastline. And this, most model guides really is kind of zooming right into Louisiana or maybe the coastal areas of Mississippi. Now, I said this in last night's video. Don't tell everybody and your cousin's uncle's dog that Mitch said there's going to be a Category 1 hurricane that hits Louisiana Thursday night and Friday. I'm just comparing model guidance. One thing we can take from this is it's really likened to throw all the energy right into Louisiana, and I really think the entire Gulf coastline is just going to be wet. Now, does it make it all the way to Texas before, does it make it all the way to Texas, or does it turn north and kind of around the upper ridging in place, and does it even affect Texas? Not quite sure. We got to figure that one out, but it does throw a tropical storm right into Louisiana and then impacts Mississippi. So this is definitely more of your aggressive scenario. So maybe you ask, is there a possibility of this happening? And I would answer that question with saying absolutely. Absolutely. We have seen time and time again model guidance underplay the tropics. We just saw it a couple weeks ago with Chantal. Most model guidance did not show a tropical storm. No global models did. So I think this is a real possibility. Am I telling you to evacuate the Gulf coastline? No. I mean, I would say you probably don't need to evacuate the Gulf coastline for a tropical storm or even a low-end hurricane. At least I wouldn't. Don't want to throw off the wrong message there, but you get what I'm saying. But we need to watch this. And in my personal opinion, I think this is a realistic scenario. Just not trying to... You guys know, if anybody's been watching my channel for any length of time, you know I'm not going to... I don't try to put fear in everybody for no reason. It's just my personal opinion. And, of course, you can only look at 500 millibar vort here, and this is in the mid-levels, like 18,000 feet up in the air, but it clearly shows a defined area of energy cruising across the Gulf. And one thing I noticed with the icon is it's a little bit further south in the Gulf, more so in portions of almost the central Gulf. So we continue to move this and just throws a big chunk of energy, which is a tropical storm, right into the Gulf coastline. So what backs my thinking on how this is a realistic scenario, or just a scenario of even just a weak tropical storm? Well, the sea surface temperatures, which is in Celsius, by the way, on Tropical Tidbits, and most outputs, it shows it in Celsius. So 29, 30, 31 degrees Celsius, that's about the mid. It's even some places, once you get into 30s in Celsius, the upper 80s in Fahrenheit. So the northern Gulf right now is warmer than the southern Gulf in a lot of areas, if not everywhere in the Caribbean. I mean, the Gulf right now is very warm. So this tropical system or energy is going to cruise right over this region right here. I mean, that's sea surface temperatures are in the mid to in some places upper 80s. In some areas, it's probably around 90 degrees. I wouldn't be surprised if we look at some buoys out here in the Gulf and it showed that the sea surface temperatures were 90 degrees, one bit at all. So this is where this energy would go over. So, your sea surface temperatures certainly support not only tropical development, but the strengthening of a tropical system. So you can check that off the box. Next thing we look at, and I didn't show this much last night, is the upper level wind flow and the pattern. So this is going to be rounding, and I'm about to speak on the ridge here in a second when we break down the steering currents. But we're going to take a look at the icon here because it shows what's going on really well, because it does just show a stronger system. But as we cruise this, and this is the part that can be a little bit more difficult to understand for, and please take no offense to this, but just your average viewer that's just dropping in to get an update on the tropics, but at the same time, would like to understand what's going on with the atmosphere, which I applaud you for that, by the way. Some people just want you to tell them exactly what's going to happen, then they're going to head on off. And, if that's you, that's cool. If you're not interested in the weather, hey, you're not interested. There's a lot of things that you guys are interested in that I'm not interested in. So I totally get it. But this is where the icon, this is for Wednesday, midday or so. This is where the icon is showing where our tropical system could be. Now, this is at 200 millibars. So this is way up in the atmosphere, like 35, 40,000 feet up in the air. So if you notice, way above the storm, because this system is weak, it's not very tall. Your flow, if you look at these little streamlines with the arrows embedded into them, it's kind of getting pushed out away from the system. It's kind of being pushed out that way, that way. Now, it's a little bit different here. A little bit of flow getting pushed up against the system might create a little bit of wind shear, but outflow channels being, pushed out that way, that way. Heck, it's even being pushed out that way. So we call this, an outflow, or in some cases, you can call it a ULA an upper level anticyclone. I'm getting my terminology because I'm rusty on this. So a ULAC, upper level anticyclone. It's basically when winds are kind of dispersing in the opposite direction as the actual cyclonic flow of the low pressure itself. Now, this isn't probably a great example of this. In this case, we just have outflow being pushed out, air is being pushed out away from the system, right? What this allows for is more air to rise, and then that air gets pushed out away, more air rises, that air gets pushed out away, and this cycle of air getting pushed out away from the system allows just for more air to rise. We know that rising air allows for the sustaining and firing of convection. Convection is shower and storm activity. That creates a moist environment. So I do think the upper wind pattern, for the most part, could support tropical development. Now, this is going to deal with some sort of wind shear, just like any tropical system does. But just with upper ridging nearby, I do think that it's going to support a favorable wind pattern for tropical development. So that's another reason why I think this has a shot to develop. Now, we keep this going, and we look at steering currents. Now, this is the part that's kind of throwing people for a loop. They're like, how do you get a tropical system that starts off right here and then dives down like this and goes like that? And I'll agree, you don't see it much. But the reason is just remember, around low pressure, which is the blue you're seeing on your screen, and high pressure, which is more of the warmer colors you see on your screen on this output, which is the yellows, the dark oranges. Around lower pressure, it spins cyclonically, so just like this. Okay. Now, not the best example to show you with this, just because we have a more shrinked-in view, not a broad view. But the flow around this high pressure is going like this, the opposite direction. So it's kind of going like this, and it kind of comes up like this. But I want you to kind of watch how this area sort of disappears on your screen and kind of it gets pushed back and kind of more so goes back to white. We kind of just lose more ridging flow influences on the system. But in general, this is kind of getting yanked into Florida because of the flow right here around this high pressure, or this higher pressure to the north. So you get this in motion. It continues to move, and we'll stop it here. This is for like tomorrow evening. And you see how this area disappeared? So now this kind of has a clear path to do this. Flow around this is sort of doing like that, right? Now there's going to be embedded areas of flow because this is weak ridging. I mean, it's not like a strong, super high pressure where, you're not going to get much flow inside the ridge. But this thing is getting pulled more so east to west. I'm used to saying west to east, so I got to make sure I say it right. But east to west. So this is why this is getting pulled in that direction across the northern Gulf, because the flow, the bottom edge of this ridge is going just like that. So it supports it moving that way. I hope that makes sense. There'll be much better examples of this when we're tracking a stronger tropical system. Now, I will always say this. A stronger low pressure is always going to want to gain latitude. It wants to fight to get further north. So as soon as this thing gets stronger on, say, the icon, it immediately wants to get north. And even though you got ridging, by the way, it's weaker. You got ridging on top of the system. This thing is going to try to fight to go on and sneak north at this point. So that's why it's going the direction it's going. Hope that makes sense. And like I said, there'll be better examples of this when we get deeper into hurricane season. But I think this is a pretty good example of it too. Basically it's just running east to west just because there's a ridge on top of it. And the flow at the bottom edge of the ridge goes just like that. So hope that makes sense for you folks. Always want to explain things where you guys, the audience, can understand. That's a huge goal of this channel. But rainfall between now and the next week, and let's see if we got any updated information. Between now and the next week, really the next few days, you guys are going to get soaked in Florida. Just several inches of rain. Once you start to get into these yellow and orange colors down here, that's 4 to 6 inches of rain. But it has a secondary highlighted area for southeast Louisiana, southern Mississippi. You guys could get 4 to 6 inches of rain. But you notice all along the Gulf coastline, a few inches of rain is likely. So heavy rainfall on the way, expected. This is really the only big impact we know as of right now. Now you ask Mitch, what about winds? What's going to be our wind speeds in Billy Bob Town, Mississippi, Louisiana? Nobody knows that because we don't even know if this is going to turn into a strong enough system to produce high impact winds, right? So we'll figure that stuff out when we get a little bit closer. So that's an update on the tropics. Let's give you an update on today's weather. let's get this in motion for you folks. And of course, when we spend so much time on the tropics, guys, or on another heavy topic, we're not going to be able to get as detailed on the daily forecast as we normally do, but we'll still get detailed for you folks. But we do got energy cruising across the eastern U.S. This will set the stage for another day of showers and storms. We're already getting heavy rain across Ohio. Once again, getting the flash flood warnings across areas of Texas. We hate to see that. Just a stagnant flow down here and tons of tropical moisture. Up here in the northern and central areas of the country, we have all our flow, which is positioned down here, which is why our stuff is moving so slow down here, because there's not much flow to push it on out the way. All of our flow is up here, so big ridging all the way up across the central and western U.S. will create a very hot air mass across these areas today, but our main area of flow is up here in Canada. So we can see our tropical moisture over Florida also. Now, watches, warnings, and advisories. The orange you see on your screen, these are heat advisories. We got the hot pink, that's red flag warnings. We got this color of purple here. These are extreme heat warnings. So it's very hot across the western U.S. Flood watches remain in place for areas of Texas. We got flood watches scattered from the mid-Atlantic all the way up the I-95 corridor into portions of southern New England. Flood watches are in place for areas of southeast Florida. And I do think we'll start to get some flood watches up for areas of the Gulf coastline over the next 24, 48 hours. But this will be a big topic coming up here in a second. A lot of rain is possible across the mid-Atlantic. But the risk of severe weather, huge marginal risk across the northern terrain of the country. I think it's more of an isolated risk, but any storms that do fire up here will have an opportunity to hit strong and severe limits. There is a risk of severe weather down here in Arizona. A little small risk here across areas of right where just Missouri, Kentucky, Illinois, Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi come together. And just a long kind of scrawny marginal risk that goes from Florida all the way up to Georgia, the Carolinas, Virginia, Mid-Atlantic, into New England. Now, any risk of tornadoes today? No, but so that's good. But, just the marginal risk, just your daily risk of hail and some gusty winds. But the risk of flash flooding is getting pretty high here across areas of the Mid-Atlantic. Of course, you do got the 15% risk down here in southern Texas with just the stagnant pattern in place. Florida, you got the 15% risk of flash flooding, flash flood guidance being exceeded within 25 miles in a given location from pretty much south of Gainesville throughout the rest of the entirety of the peninsula of Florida. Now, I am concerned about, Washington, D.C., up to Philadelphia, and these areas here. You guys have a 40% risk of flash flood guidance being exceeded within 25 miles in a given location. So the risk of flash flooding is higher here compared to anybody else in the country. And there's a 15% risk that extends just about to Charlotte, goes all the way to the rest of North Carolina, all the way up here into areas of southern New England. So yellow area, 15% risk of flash flooding. Now, taking a look at the southeast today, we're going to zoom into one area really here, and that's probably going to be Florida. As you can tell, a lot of shower and storm activity whipping through Florida. Everywhere else, just normal tropical rain activity and just thunderstorm activity you see here in Georgia. I mean, there is going to be a risk of some of these storms in this area right up here to be strong to severe, marginal risk in place, but just does not show widespread storms. But you see a more organized area of storms up here in northern Virginia. We'll zoom into that area when we talk about the Northeast. But let's go on and just zoom into Texas. I haven't done that in a long time. For people who's been tuning in for a while or have not been tuning in for a while, you guys know that I have a history of calling Florida, Texas, and Texas, Florida, especially Florida, Texas. But trust me, I know my states, guys. But starting off late morning here in Florida, we get into this afternoon, and I really just think we're going to get a big kind of whiplash of some nasty storms across Florida today. And like I said, it could be anywhere from Jacksonville, Gainesville, point south. Anybody could see it. No point in really pinpointing these storms. Model guidance is not going to nail this down for us perfectly. But just be aware, these storms will have a lot of motion with them just because we have the flow around this somewhat developing tropical system off the coastline. But this will swing through, and I do think there'll be a good 5 to 6 hour period. We'll be really stormy this afternoon across Florida. So these storms will kind of swing through almost from the north to the south. So be aware of these storms today in the state of Florida. You guys could certainly get a lot of rain today also. But the Northeast, we'll spend some time here. And there's a lot of flow up here. So we'll get to this afternoon. You see all that storm activity? I mean, really in PA into southern areas of New York. We got some storms up here in Maine also. These could pack a punch too, guys. So big storms up here in Maine. And then we start to get into this evening. We have a line of storms pretty much impacting anywhere from the D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York City area. We could get some storms up here in Portland, Augusta, Maine, and it looks like it almost breaks up before it really impacts Boston. But let's go on and just take a closer look at these areas. We'll start south to north here. Starting off around lunchtime, the D.C. corridor showing all of Maryland. And, we get into about 6 p.m. Look at the big storms up near Hagerstown, Frederick, Winchester. There'll be a big storm opportunity. Wilmington, watch out Dover. And then we get into 8 p.m. Big storms tonight, rumbling through Washington, D.C. up to Baltimore. And then 9 p.m., 10 p.m., these storms will try to sink down into the Tidewater, Delmarva area. And these could definitely drop a lot of heavy rainfall, guys. I mean, the atmosphere will be loaded and ready to rock and roll to drop a lot of rain in this region. And speaking of rainfall between now, stinks. Why did it do that? Oh, I just love when it randomly signs you out. It loves doing that. But it likes to do that at least once every 2 weeks. So let's go back to where we were. Sorry about the lack of flow here. And this is rainfall between now and tomorrow evening. So, I mean, anywhere in the purple could get over an inch of rain, but there's going to be basically just 1 to 2 inches of rain scattered about across this area. In some areas, we'll get more rain than what's being shown here. Now, up here in PA, starting off around midday, 12, 1 o'clock, big storms will fire in about the central areas of the state. Williamsport State College, this will eventually get down into Harrisburg, Hazleton, Scranton, Allentown, Lancaster, and eventually, as we're getting into about 8 o'clock, we'll begin to impact the Philadelphia area. This is 9, 10 o'clock. So a lot of rain could fall in these areas also. And let's see if it's going to do what it just did to me. No, it's not. We're good. So this is rainfall between now and about 8 o'clock tomorrow. So a good bit of rain in the eastern areas of PA expected for sure. So gotta be prepared for flash flooding in these areas and just take it serious. Don't wait until it gets serious. I think that's just something that people do with the weather. They don't take the weather serious until it's serious. But take it serious. We'll start off this morning, late morning here in the New York City up the Boston corridor, including everybody in between. And I do think as we start to get into this afternoon, we'll start to get some storms. And this is getting to 5 o'clock. This is 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. Storms numerous in nature. Springfield, Waterbury, Hartford, down to New York City, Middletown, all of New Jersey, especially northern New Jersey. Storms will be rocking and rolling through the area. So if you like a good summer thunderstorm in New York City, hey, you might have an opportunity to get it this evening. And then all this activity will scoot on through. Once again, we will look at rainfall being forecast in this area between now and about the next 36 hours. A lot of rain, especially just west of the New York City area. Bridgewater could get over an inch, so we could get a lot of rain in these areas for sure. So be careful up in Maine. Thunderstorms are possible up there too. Now, the south central U.S., just watch out for this rain dancing around, not moving a whole lot. There's not a lot of flow down here in kind of the hill country of Texas. So just be mindful of this area of storms down here. Could have some storms up kind of northeast of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And elsewhere, just your normal run-of-the-mill pop-up thunderstorm activity. I mean, Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, etc. Just normal type stuff. And the only thing that I'm concerned about is just continuous moisture hitting these same areas down here in Texas throughout the overnight hours. Hopefully, you guys will fare well down there. But could wake up to a lot of heavy rain in the state of Arkansas for tomorrow morning. But the north central U.S., there's a huge marginal risk stretched across the Dakotas, Montana also. But, on this particular run, it doesn't show a whole lot of anything, guys. I mean, there's not a whole lot to speak on. There's just not a lot to speak on. The model guidance doesn't really highlight much storms. Now, there is going to be some storms cruising through, say, maybe western Nebraska, western South Dakota, later this evening, so I'd be aware of that. But I really think it takes until later tonight, like after midnight, before storms start to really get inside the U.S. border. So we start to get some storms in northern North Dakota, northern Minnesota tomorrow morning as the flow sort of sinks a little bit southward. And then the western U.S., just watch out for some storms in Montana today. But, outside of that, some storms down here in Arizona dancing around. Be mindful of these southern areas of Arizona, I would say. But outside of that, some rainy times probably in northern Montana, especially the overnight hours. Not a whole lot to speak on out here. Temperatures, listen, the entire country is going to be pretty warm. I mean, as you can tell, 80s, 90s scattered everywhere. I mean, warm all the way up to the Canadian-U.S. border. Same thing out west. I mean, it's very hot. There is a sharp cutoff once you get into this flow up in Canada, but the flow is in Canada, not the lower 48. So everybody south of the flow is going to be very warm, that's for sure. So, yeah, let's go back and see if we can catch an update on... we don't have an update. So we're just going to use this as our timestamp, and we're going to do some Bible scripture really fast with you folks. Spend a few minutes in the Word. So this morning we are in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 11 through 12. And if you do hear my dog barking in the background, I do apologize. Just Copper, or Husky, that's about to be 6 months here in about 10 days. So he's still technically a puppy. You just don't look like one. But anyways, let's focus here. So 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 11 through 12. It says, "Dear friends, I urge you as strangers and exiles to abstain from sinful desires that wage war against the soul. Conduct yourselves honorably among the Gentiles, so that when they slander you as evildoers, they will observe your good works and will glorify God on the day he visits." So, I, of course, got a list of notes here. I said, resist and consistently fight back sinful desires. Just because you're a follower of Christ doesn't mean worldly things won't be tempting. I think we all know that, right? These spiritual battles, if not resisted, can negatively impact your relationship with God and others. People knowing you as who you say you are, a follower of Christ, will not receive a good example of what a follower of Christ is supposed to be, which could ultimately impact the spreading of the gospel. We are called to live a life of Christ-like character. By doing this, others who do not believe what you believe might be drawn to you, setting up an opportunity to share the good news. Therefore, God is being glorified. So God can be glorified through you setting the example of Christ-like characteristics. So just remember, as followers of Christ, sometimes just doing good things can make people interested that aren't believers in what you believe in. And I know that's a very, just, I guess, broad thing, if you will. It's a simpler way to put it. But I really think, first off, we know that just because we're followers of Christ, we're not exempt from, sinful desires, worldly desires. I think we all should know that. And, they're going to come. So, people are always watching that might not be believers. I say this all the time on the channel when we do these Bible devotions. I really think someone's always watching. Someone's always watching how you handle something. And that person that's watching, might not be a follower of Christ, might not believe what you believe. They might not be saved. And they're sort of not waiting for something bad to happen to you, but they're almost waiting to see how you handle it. And like I said, it's not like they're sitting back and just waiting and waiting and waiting, but, an opportunity might be present to where, maybe y'all know each other, y'all work together, family members, and they see how you handle adversity. And if you handle it the way that Christ would want you to handle it, they might say, okay, hey, this is something I'm interested in, and they might start asking you questions. So I hope that makes sense, and the negative aspect of that, I think people are much easier. For example, somebody goes to church, and the first time they go to the church, they immediately get a bad encounter. Like, nobody says anything to them as for example, it's like a new person going to a new church. Nobody engages conversation with them. Nobody talks to them, invites them, things like that. That first encounter is huge. They talk about that a lot at my church, and it is huge. It is huge because sometimes people will try to go to church or just try to do things that involve God, and they get a very bad first impression. And who knows, they might not even attempt to do anything, like go to church or something, again for another 10 years. So it is huge. And what you do as a follower of Christ, it means a ton. How do you handle stuff? I think it's as simple as this, and people aren't going to agree maybe, but one of the big things that nag me to all, it just, you can ask my wife, it just nags the mess out of me, is when people do not put their cart back at the grocery store, and they just put it up on a curb, or they, even worse, just kind of just leave it out in the parking lot. And I think that's and you call this judgmental, but listen, if we're being real, which we always try to be on this channel, I'm just going to be real with you. I think that you can judge somebody's character a lot off that. Now, there's always an anomaly situation. The person's handicapped. There's always there's an anomaly situation to everything, guys. But there's people, and what I'm saying is, say, someone might know you or just are watching you, and they watch you put that cart back, and, it's just a great example of, what would Jesus do? Jesus would put the cart back, right? So just consistently fight to do the right thing, and the thing that Christ would do and how he would handle certain situations. And I might not be a best example of it, but I know for me, when I see a piece of trash on the ground, I try to pick it up. I just try to always do the right thing. I fail at it sometimes. My lack of patience certainly impacts the way I handle things sometimes negatively. But, the key is that I'm constantly working on it. And you have to constantly also work on the things that you struggle with the most. If you quit working on it, then it's just going to amplify. We all have weak spots, guys. So just set the example, set the bar, guys. That's all I got. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all, and have a wonderful start to your week.